Hey everyone, Bradley Jack Design here with another design breakdown, this time my most recent Mitchell Trubisky graphic that I created. So I'm going to hop in here and show you what it took to create this general graphic of Mitchell Trubisky, who's going to be the 2019-2020 NFL MVP. So let's get rid of everything first. We've got to start with the background. It's generally where all of my designs start. I don't necessarily make the background first. It's just this is what develops for the background throughout my design process. So first thing we have is some grass here. I used a little bit of a levels layer set to screen to brighten up this side over here. And then I have a stadium just sort of blended into the background. I also apparently threw my name in here 3 times that I completely forgot about. So they're in there, just threw my handle on there, and I put a gradient map on top of the stadium here to make it a little bit darker. I have this layer which just has a slight inner glow on it set to multiply, and that just has a slight vignette on everything below it. Next I've got a photo of Soldier Field that I have here that I really roughly clipped out and set a couple adjustment layers to it to darken it up a bunch. And the reason I did that, so these are set to multiply, and multiply. And I painted in certain areas and masked and unmasked certain areas. The reason I did that was because when I turn this gradient map on, that makes everything black and white. It looks better. If I don't do that, it's super washed out. So I wanted to mute it a little bit. And then I covered the whole background in just a dark gray set to multiply at a light opacity of 40%, just to solidify everything back here. I've got a couple files of sort of a vignette that I added to the bottom here. Just wanted to darken up the bottom, so I've got a stock file I use to do that. And then I have Mitchell Trubisky's shadow, where his feet are. So those are where his feet are. So if we go up to here to my Mitchell layer, turn all this stuff off. There he is. Oh, here we go. So I've got lighting in front of him. I've got the flare behind him. Got a levels layer on him, and I've got him himself. So this is an edited image of Mitchell Trubisky we've got here. I have a path blur on it, and I have it masked to pretty much only his leg here, his arm, and his other arm, because those are what is going to be most likely to be moving in the composition. Now this file of Mitchell himself is right here. So the original image, hold on, let's open up that smart object and take a look at it. I thought this was one smart object, but it's a smart object inside a smart object. So these are all the layers that it took to make him look like this. So it started off, if we hop in here, oops, regular photo of Mitchell Trubisky, a little bit of editing done to him on that, but for the most part, just threw him into Photoshop, did a little bit of tweaking, did some color correcting in certain spots, and then I used a curves layer to make this look funky. If you draw a curves layer and like sort of just do these hills, it does this effect. So then if I were to put another gradient on top of that of, say, yellow, it turns gold. So I went in and just painted over what all of the orange was to make it this golden color. I also took this hue and saturation layer and changed the hue of gold, or not orange, to be more yellow. That's why his skin is turning yellow. I have a gradient map here of black and white that I painted over his jersey to make it black and white, because I wanted the main aspects of this design to be black and gold, to be a golden Mitchell Trubisky graphic. I've got a black and white gradient map to make his skin black and white, and then I have some levels layers, one set to screen, one set to multiply, to add in some more detail in the shadows and the highlights. There's a whole video I make on how to edit images. Take a look at that. That's pretty much the process I use here with these levels layers and this gradient map layer here that's been rasterized. So take a look at that video if you want to learn how to edit an image like I do. So in this image then, it looks like I went ahead and painted in a couple areas. I added a glow around him to act as if this was glowing or if the light was glowing. And with the glow around him, I wanted to make that look realistic, so I put a little bit of some soft brush strokes masked to him himself. And then I've got a couple levels layers to tweak what this golden ball looks like, because it looks a little bit more realistic instead of having just one solid orange at the bottom. So that's where we have this Mitchell Trubisky in the graphic itself. So behind him I have this flare. So this is just a flare file I have that I have a gradient map on it. It's set to screen at 100%. Yeah, I have this levels layer on top of him. Let me see what this does. Not a clue. The ball, maybe? No idea. Oh well, it's there now. Then I've got some lighting on top of him, so I just duplicated this flare with the same gradient map. I have a levels layer on top of it to get rid of some of the blacks, and I went ahead and just masked it to only the inside of Trubisky. So it's this inside line here to show that it's sort of glowing around him. On top of that, I have this golden glow. So these layers are just multiple layers of the same thing set to different Gaussian blurs, set to screen, 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 and the bottom one is normal. So what these are is, if you go up to select, you can select color range. And what I did was I went in here, and it's gonna look differently, but you can click on the plus eyedropper tool and select yellow, and it's selecting all of the yellow in the file. So I essentially did that with just the jersey, turned it into a smart object, and then set a different Gaussian blur to it. And then I took a gradient map and put it on top of that, because if I turn it off, you know, that's stupid yellow, it's not gold. So I want it to be gold, so to change the color of it, I have that set to color with the gradient map to make it golden. On top of Trubisky and behind Trubisky, we've got a bunch of confetti. But first things first, we've got some 3D text. So I went ahead and made some 3D text in Cinema 4D Lite, some pretty basic text. I'll do a different tutorial on how to do that later. I have another layer on top of it set to multiply to get some of these details out a little bit. Then on top of it, I went ahead and I think I overlaid this gold texture, and I could have done this in more realistically in Cinema 4D, but I already had this exported, so I didn't want to change it. And then I have a gradient map on top of that to make it the same gold color all around. So I just have the text in there. I have some flares on the text to really brighten it up. So let's see, what's this flare? So really these are all the same files, or not files, same thing. It's a flare. This one I Gaussian blurred. I had a Gaussian blur on top of the regular flare, but it's a flare with a little bit of a levels layer to get rid of the edges with this golden gradient map. And it's the same thing for this one. This one just has a Gaussian blur to just add a little bit more of a glow to the flare. But these are all just different flares where I took the flare, put it on there somewhere. There it is. Got rid of the edges by using a levels layer. So hypothetically that edge is gone now, and then put a gradient map on top of it, which will make it gold. So this is set to hue to make this look gold. So it's maintaining a lot of luminosity if you change it to hue. So I've got another flare that's gonna pop up in here somewhere. There it is. So I have a gradient map on that, which makes it gold. That one's also set to hue. Now I can see here there's a little bit of a line, so I probably actually need to go in here with a levels layer and just move over this black just a little bit to get rid of that. Let's see if that's enough. Yeah, there we go. That's better. So I've got another one here. So there's another flare up there. There's apparently a logo up there, so I'm going to go ahead and mask that out because don't need that on there. That's kind of funny. My brush is at 20%, so I'm just going to click a bunch to get rid of it. Okay, so those are the flares we have on top of the text. Now behind the text, we have a bunch of confetti. So I have this confetti file I found, where I basically, win a trip to Mexico confetti. I have no idea where I found this. I just found it online. I have a gradient map on all of these to make it golden confetti. So I just have multiple ones to fill up the space with confetti falling. And I made it smaller because it's behind the text. I also have confetti in front of the text, which is here. So if I turn this confetti on, this confetti I think is in front of Trubisky as well. Yeah, so it's in front of Trubisky to add a little bit more depth. Again, it's just this random confetti file. I masked out some of them. I must have masked out some of the darker ones that didn't look good. And then I have some confetti in the front. It's the same confetti file, the same gradient map. These I blurred though. So I set a Gaussian blur to probably 10 or 15. So it looks like it was in the front. So it's adding depth. You're building different layers of depth in the design using a process like this. I went ahead and actually have two of the same layer. This top one's set to screen to brighten them up just because I didn't think they were bright enough. So I just brightened them up with a screened layer. So then what we have is we have some top lighting up at the top. So I've got some files I like to use. These all have the same gradient map on it. Some of them are blurred, some of them aren't. I think this one is blurred to add some depth. So yeah, this is just adding some depth up here at the top with some lighting. I've got another file to add a little bit of sort of a flare up at the top. There it is up here, some sparkles up at the top. This one's adding a little bit more sparkles, a little bokeh to the top of the graphic, just to show that there's light emitting from the top of this graphic. There it is. And then I've got another light file to shine some sort of light leaks from the top. Same gradient map that I've been using, standard levels layer like I have, just with the black moved over slightly. And I've got another layer here. These are actually the same layer. I think I probably wanted to brighten up the top a little bit, so that's why I've got two of them up there. Yeah, it's actually a different file, but it just adds a little bit more lighting. I then have this lighten file, or this lighten. This is a levels layer set to screen, where I went in and just painted with a light brush around some of the areas I wanted to brighten up. So areas up at the top around his face, just random areas where I just sort of clicked around to brighten up certain areas. Then I've got some smoke here at the bottom. So I've got this smoke file I reversed horizontally. So I have smoke on the left and smoke on the right. So it looks like this. And I just have the same gradient map I've been using to make them gold instead of blue. So if I turn those on and let my computer load, there it goes. I've got some golden smoke at the front. And then I've got my color lookups. So what did I put on this one? I'll turn this one on and wait for my computer to load before I get the spinning wheel of death. This file is like 2 gigs, so it takes a hot sec to load. So this is candlelight. This adds a little bit of an orange hue to everything. I don't know if we'll be able to discern that. It's at 25% only. Then what we have here is another color lookup of, I can hardly wait. The anticipation's killing me as to what it is. Kodak 2395, that's what I thought. So you can see it turned a little bit orange because it loaded the actual color lookup from that file. This is set to 50% too, by the way, which I use in a lot of my designs. And then drop blues. I already painted away the blues, but this is the blues being dropped in the design completely. So this is the final design, but what I actually did was I went ahead and dropped it into a new composition, saved it out, and then I added a blur gallery filter to it of an iris blur. So I wanted to blur the edges and make it look like we were just focusing on the middle here. And what you can do in the effects over here is you can boost up this light bokeh and this bokeh color. So if I put this down, you can see it's mainly just blurring it now, but I liked the way the light was being blown out. So I went ahead and turned that effect on. So I used a iris blur, which you can find in the blur gallery under filters. Those are fun to play around with. So I really had that. I went ahead and put my watermark at the bottom, just a little design by Bradley Jack Design. Duplicated that a couple times and blurred it to sort of match the design. Set them to screen. I did another levels layer set to screen, and I just painted in certain spots to brighten up the design. And then I put just a lens dirt on top of it to add a little bit more depth to the design in general. So that's the final Mitchell Trubisky design that you've seen posted on my Instagram. So I hope you got a lot out of this tutorial, mainly probably with the blur gallery there at the end to get this effect on the edges. I think I'm going to use it more often. It seems pretty sweet. So if you have any suggestions for me to do a tutorial or design breakdown, go ahead and drop a comment below. Other than that, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.